Fear during childhood. Certain fears are normal during childhood. That's because fear can be a natural reaction to feeling unsure and vulnerable, and much of what children experience is new and unfamiliar. Young kids often have fears of the dark, being alone, strangers and monsters, or other scary imaginary creatures. School age kids might be afraid when it's stormy or at a first sleepover. As they grow and learn with the support of adults, most kids are able to slowly conquer these fears and outgrow them. Some kids are more sensitive to fears and may have a tough time overcoming them. When fears last beyond the expected age, it might be a sign that someone is overly fearful, worried, or anxious. People whose fears are too intense or last too long might need help and support to overcome them. Phobias. A phobia is an intense fear reaction to a particular thing or situation. With a phobia, the fear is out of proportion to the potential danger, but to the person with the phobia, the danger feels real because the fear is so very strong. Phobias cause people to worry about, dread, feel upset by, and avoid the things or situations they fear because the physical sensations of fear can be so intense. So having a phobia can interfere with normal activities. A person with a phobia of dogs might feel afraid to walk to school in case he or she sees a dog on the way. Someone with an elevator phobia might avoid a field trip if it involves going to an elevator. A girl with a phobia of thunderstorms might be afraid to go to school if the weather forecast predicts a storm. She might feel terrible distress and fear when the sky turns cloudy. A guy with social phobia experiences intense fear of public speaking or interacting and may be afraid to answer questions in class, give a report, or speak to classmates in the lunchroom. It can be exhausting and upsetting to feel the intense fear that goes with having a phobia. It can be disappointing to miss out on opportunities because fear is holding you back. And it can be confusing and embarrassing to feel afraid of things that others seem to have no problem with. Sometimes people can get teased about their fears, even if the person doing the teasing doesn't mean to be unkind and unfair. Teasing only makes the situation worse. Some phobias develop when someone has a scary experience with a particular thing or situation. A tiny brain structure called the amygdala keeps track of experiences that trigger strong emotions. Once a certain thing or situation triggers a strong fear reaction, the amygdala warns the person by triggering a fear reaction every time he or she encounters or even thinks about that thing or situation. Someone might develop a bee phobia after being stung during a particularly scary situation. For that person, looking at a photograph of a bee, seeing a bee from a distance, or even walking near flowers where there could be a bee can all trigger the phobia. Sometimes, though, there may be no single event that causes a particular phobia. Some people may be more sensitive to fear because of personality traits they are born with, certain genes they've inherited, or situations they've experienced. People who have had strong childhood fears or anxiety may be more likely to have one or more phobias. Having a phobia isn't a sign of weakness or immaturity. It's a response the brain has leaned in an attempt to protect the person. It's as if the brain's alert system triggered a false alarm, generating intense fear that is out of proportion to the situation. Because the fear signal is so intense, the person is convinced the danger is greater than it actually is. Overcoming phobias. People can learn to overcome phobias by gradually facing their fears. This is not easy at first. It takes willingness and bravery. Sometimes people need the help of a therapist to guide them through the process. Overcoming a phobia usually starts with making a long list of the person's fears in least to worst order. For example, with a dog phobia, the list might start with the things the person is least afraid of, such as looking at a photo of a dog. It will then work all the way up to the worst fears, such as standing next to someone who's petting a dog on a leash, walking a dog. Gradually and with support, the person tries each fear situation on the list, one at a time, starting with the least fear. The person isn't forced to do anything and works on each fear until he or she feels comfortable, taking as long as needed. A therapist could also show someone with a dog phobia how to approach, pet, and walk a dog and help the person to try it too. The person may expect terrible things to happen when near a dog. Talking about this can help too. When people find that what they fear doesn't actually turn out to be true, it can be a great relief. A therapist might also teach relaxation practices such as specific ways of breathing, muscle relaxation training, or soothing self talk. These can help people feel comfortable and bold enough to face the fears on their list. As someone gets used to a feared object or situation, the brain adjusts how its response and the phobia is overcome. How often the hardest part of overcoming a phobia is getting started. Once a person decides to go for it and gets the right coaching and support, it can be surprising how quickly fear can melt away. All right, guys, time to go on to your assignments.